Hello everybody, Phil Snyder, GunClassUtah.com. Hey, I've got another real life news story to talk about. This occurred June 16, 2025. Aggravated assault case at Timpanogos Park in Orem, Utah. Suspect in this case, according to the news source, Jacob Daniel Walker, age 46, was walking his dog off leash in the park. The victim female confronted Mr. Walker about the leash rules in the park, and Mr. Walker allegedly pointed a gun at this woman's face and told her expletive to get the F out of here, I'm assuming. So the woman, in a panic, she retreated and she went and called the police. Orem Police showed up. They found Mr. Walker in the parking lot. He invoked his right to remain silent, which is probably a smart idea. The police recovered a loaded handgun from Mr. Walker, and it had 11 rounds in the gun. Let's talk about the charges and the ramifications for what Mr. Walker did. Okay. Aggravated assault is a third-degree felony in Utah, and it carries, if he's convicted, it carries a prison term of not less than 1 year and a maximum of 15 years in the state prison, and fines with that as well. If he's convicted, he will not be able to possess or own firearms due to being convicted of a violent felony, which this is. He's going to need an attorney to represent himself, and a good attorney can be $500 an hour or more. I could see this easily going to $50,000 if it goes to trial, and he needs a lawyer during all of that. This is what happens. In order for Mr. Walker to be justified in drawing a gun on somebody like that, he would need to be in imminent fear. This woman that confronted him would need to have created an immediate fear in him of being seriously injured or killed, or if this woman was committing a forcible felony. Now, we know this isn't the case. I mean, I just don't understand why this guy got so angry. He's probably mentally unstable. That's another thing. The court, as part of the sentencing, if he's convicted, I'm sure they're going to order a mental health evaluation and maybe a substance abuse evaluation if that's appropriate. If it's determined that he's got some mental health issues as a result of the court sentencing, the court can have a hearing on his competency to own a firearm, and he could permanently lose his right if there was a hearing in front of a judge. And under state and federal law, if you are declared mentally incompetent from owning a handgun, then you lose those rights for life. Even if he doesn't have an evaluation and the mental health is not an issue, he's going to get mental anger management counseling is likely going to be a part of that sentence as well. People they don't make good decisions with guns. But the very definition of aggravated assault, and I'm just going to apply it the way it is here, and what the police were thinking is, if you make a threat accompanied by a show of immediate force with a dangerous weapon, or if you commit an act with a dangerous weapon that causes a substantial risk of bodily harm to somebody or worse, that is the very definition of aggravated assault. And in this case, it would be both. Saying, get the F out of here, and pointing a loaded gun at somebody's face without legal justification would be that threat accompanied by a show of immediate force. The police can also articulate that pointing a loaded gun in an angry, heated moment at somebody's face could have easily went off and caused a discharge by pointing that gun in an unsafe direction. I had a very similar case in Magna, Utah, when I was working for the Unified Police Department. I was working patrol, and I got a call on a road rage in a parking lot of an apartment building. These two men both live there. The suspect was a concealed carry firearm permit holder. He had a concealed carry gun on him that day, and he confronted this guy that took the parking stall, that beat him to the stall, and he demanded that he move the vehicle. And the guy in the vehicle was just saying, well, this is not your stall. This is a guest parking. I'm not moving it. And it went back and forth. And after being told to leave several times, the guy in the car got out and he told the suspect, you know, get the hell out of here. I'm going to beat your ass if you don't leave me alone. Go away. And the concealed carry holder drew his gun out. Back up right now. And he pointed this gun at the guy's chest that was just minding his own business. So he called the police and he was upset. I was the officer that showed up on the scene and he was just shaking because of the adrenaline dump, as anybody would. And he asked to pursue charges against this guy for pointing a gun at him. So I said, well, let me get the story from this guy. So I found out where he lived in the apartment building. I had him come out and talk to me. I instructed him to leave his gun in the apartment. And I asked him for his side of the story. I said, did you point a gun at this guy? He said, you pointed a gun and you leveled it right at his chest. And he said, yeah, I did. I said, well, why did you do that? He said, well, I was in fear of my life, sir. I mean, those are good words to say. You should be in imminent fear of your life if you're going to draw a gun and point it at somebody. I said, go on, I'm listening. And he said, well, you know, that guy threatened to kick my ass. That's assault. And you saw how big that guy was. He had 50 pounds on me and he was, you know, almost a foot taller. So he was trying to articulate that he was justified in pointing a loaded gun at somebody because of the size. And he was trying to articulate that this guy committed an unlawful use of force by a verbal threat. Anyway, I went on to further question him and I said, was your chamber loaded? He said, yeah, I always carry one in the chamber. I said, was your finger on the trigger when you pointed your gun at this guy's chest? He says, I don't remember. So I said, see, you know, you created a substantial risk of shooting this guy during the heat of the moment. You've got a loaded gun pointed at this guy's chest. You had no legal justification to confront this guy to begin with. He wasn't breaking any laws. You weren't minding your own business. And I thought that maybe he was provoking this man. I asked him if they knew each other, and he said no. So anyway, I explained to him that a verbal threat is not an assault. It has to also accompany a show of immediate force or something like that along with that threat. And this was about 10 years ago, so that's what the law was at the time. So he didn't have any use of unlawful force, and he wasn't minding his own business. This was something that he created himself. And so I booked him on aggravated assault, this same charge that the Orem Police arrested Mr. Walker for, making a threat accompanied by a show of immediate force or creating a risk of substantial risk of death or serious bodily injury by pointing a loaded gun at somebody. So I told the guy on the way to the jail, I said, you admitted that you weren't ready to fire. You said that you were just drawing the gun on this guy to de-escalate a situation. Why didn't you just point the gun at a low ready? He said, what's low ready mean? He didn't know. And I said, well, you took a concealed firearms permit course. You should have learned that from your instructor. A low ready is you're not pointing your gun at a person in self-defense. It's down at a 45-degree angle right in front of them. And I said, if you had not pointed that gun at that guy, if you would have had a little more muzzle discipline, you would have pointed it at a 45-degree angle, there would be no substantial risk of that person being injured if that gun was never pointed at him, and I would have charged you with a misdemeanor, which was a brandishing. And his face just turned white. He realized how big the mistake was that he made. That's why I emphasize in the concealed carry courses the importance of, if you're drawing a gun on somebody, don't ever point a gun at somebody and level a gun up at their body until you are committed to firing. A low ready is just down here, right out in front of you, and it doesn't take much just to come up like that. But if you do that, it shows that you are disciplined and that you've had training and that you're not being reckless. You're not creating a risk. They can't articulate a risk if you're not pointing it at them. Unless, however, maybe you're at the low ready and it's a street, that bullet could go off and ricochet off of the street and strike that person. But, you know, having a gun at a low ready, drawing on somebody when you're not justified, and having it up here could mean the difference between a felony and a misdemeanor, depending on how the officer views that. So just something to think about. Please comment and let me know what you think about this. Let me know if you think this guy is going to be convicted or not. Thanks for watching.